Hi folks, FPL General here, recording a new episode of my 59th minute FPL podcast. I'm recording on Tuesday the 24th of September. Gameweek 6 is behind us, thankfully. It was an absolutely crazy game week, which I'll get into shortly. And looking ahead now to Gameweek 7 coming up at the weekend. Going to follow similar structure as usual. No shoutouts this week. Everybody avoided the dreaded 59th minute shoutout. The closest was Marcus Rashford. He went down injured with 59 minutes on the clock, 59 minutes, and he knew he was going to get a shout out on this podcast. So he sat down long enough to make it to the 60-minute mark. So very close one for Rashford. Looks like he's out now for a couple of weeks. So he's going to be safe from a public shaming here on the podcast. Saturday, I went out. My wife took me out for dinner on Saturday. So as I often do, if we're out for the day, I like to switch off my phone and just give her my full attention rather than checking the scores every 5 or 10 minutes. So I switched off the phone before the Spurs game. Headed into Glasgow, had a lovely day. Everything was going smoothly. Resisted the urge all day to switch on the phone. Just had a really nice day, nice food, couple of drinks, not worrying about scores, clean sheets, anything like that. And then at one point, I just went up to the bar to order more drinks, and there was a guy beside me, and he was on his phone, and he put his phone sitting down on the bar. Now this was about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, so the games were over. The 3 o'clock games were over. He put his phone sitting on the bar, and the Sky Sports Super 6 was open. So for people who are not from the UK, the Sky Sports Super 6 is where you predict 6 scores on a Saturday. If you get them all right, you win £1 million or whatever it is. So his app was open and it flashed up. I just, on the corner of my eye, I could see Man City 8, Watford 0, and I'm thinking, right, that must be just his prediction. What a crazy prediction to predict Man City would win 8-0. You surely haven't won your £1 million this week. And once I seen that, I was like, you know what? Maybe they did win 8-0. So I had to check then. So I said to my wife, she had her phone. I said, go check the Man City score for me. And she checked it, and she said 8-0. And my next question was, right, who scored the goals? And she just listed them off. And I almost started to cry. 8-0, no Sterling involvement. So I knew right away, he didn't start. So, she named out the scorers, Bernardo hat-trick, De Bruyne, Aguero. And then I just said, just check did Sterling playing? And she checked the lineups and she said no. So it went from a fabulous day out in Glasgow to finding out that Sterling was benched and City won 8-0. Not just Sterling, I had Zinchenko as well. So he was benched, so missed out on a clean sheet there. So it was an absolute disaster on Saturday. But thankfully, over the rest of the weekend, I got a slice of luck, as many people did, with Lundstrom off the bench with a nice 12-pointer. Obviously, De Bruyne did the business. I had Salah vice-captain, so obviously in hindsight, De Bruyne was the right guy to vice-captain, but I very rarely do a captain and a vice-captain in the same game, just for that very small chance that something goes wrong and the game is called off. An example, a couple of years ago, I think it was Gameweek 38, the Man United game was called off, and then you're left without a captain. But again, it's such a tiny risk that maybe I need to look at vice-captain in the same game, especially when it's Man City assets. So well done to anyone who vice-captained De Bruyne. Nice 34-pointer there. Double Liverpool defence came in for me this week. No clean sheet, thanks to N'Golo Kante channeling his inner Eden Hazard with an unbelievable goal. But at least Trent got on the score sheet and Robertson got an assist as well. So that really helped with my game week. Nick Pope did the business in goal. Overall, it was 67 points. So very happy with that in what was an absolutely crazy game week. I needed all my substitutes. Greenwood didn't play, so I didn't get him in. Then Donker came off the bench with a nice own goal. So that just kind of summed up what kind of game week it was. Blanks from Lucas Dean. I think a lot of people are going to be considering selling him now, even possibly myself as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Blanks from the Norwich guys, Cantwell and Pookie as well. and Ashley Barnes. Barnes has been disappointing. Brought Barnes in 2 weeks ago, 2 blanks now after a blistering start to the season. So question marks over him as well. Do I be a little bit more patient with 2 decent fixtures coming up, or do I move him out for someone like Abraham, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. So 67 points was a healthy green arrow. Took me from 940k overall to about 575k. So green arrow of about 400,000 places. You'll take that any given week, especially in a crazy game week. So hopefully game week 7 is a bit calmer, more plain sailing. Not as many benchings and not depending on the bench as much. I'll update my watch list now. So players I've added to it first this week. Lots of defenders this week, which probably helps because I know a lot of people are probably moving away from big defenders now. So a couple of cheaper options. The first one I've added is Rico at Bournemouth. So he's got back-to-back assists. He takes corners and he's only 4.1 million. Now the worry here is, will he be first choice long term? He might not be. But even still, I think he's a good enabler. You're not really bringing him in to start him every week anyway. So if he enables a move, this week, I've got 2 free transfers this week, and Rico is in my mind. Maybe downgrade someone like Zinchenko or Lucas Dean. Get Rico, and then I can get maybe the likes of Abraham and these guys. So I think Rico is a decent option. Even if he doesn't keep his place long term, he should get the odd game. And when he is on the pitch, there's always a chance of attacking returns because he does take those corners. The next defender I've added this week is West Ham's Diop. FPL aside, every time I watch this guy, very, very impressed with him. He seems to get better and better, and I fully expect to see him at no disrespect to West Ham fans, but I expect to see him at a bigger club in the next year or two. Very, very good centre half. 4.5 million in FPL. West Ham have kept 3 clean sheets on the bounce now. I don't think West Ham fans would have even predicted that happening. So we've got to take notice. They're defending well. And Diop is probably the safest bet there. Ogbonna's been playing alongside him, who's not a great defender in my opinion. So how he might not be nailed on long term there. Balbuena is on the bench as far as I know. Left back Cresswell had a great game, great free kick, but Masuaku was suspended, so there's probably going to be a bit of rotation there. And right back Fredericks, Zabaleta is still kicking about as well. So Diop, if you're going for a West Ham defender, I think you got to go Diop, unless you want to spend the extra for Fabianski, which is probably not going to be that popular when we've got the likes of Nick Pope around and Matt Ryan. These guys are all performing quite well. So yeah, Diop is on the watch list, as is another 4.5 million defender, Chelsea's Tomori. I don't even know what this guy's first name is. I think it's a pretty long name, so I won't even try to find what it is and pronounce it on the podcast. But yeah, I've been dishing the Chelsea defence all season, and rightly so. They haven't kept a clean sheet yet, but it's the price tag, 4.5 million for Tomori, and the fixtures. Chelsea have got Brighton at home, Southampton away, Newcastle home, Burnley and Watford away. So Chelsea have as good a run as anyone over the next couple of weeks, which is the big attraction here for the likes of Tomori. And it's just his price and the fact, Christensen went off injured at the weekend as well. Rudiger's had his issues. Zuma had a very poor start to the season. So it looks like Tomori is going to be starting for the next couple of weeks at least. So I think he's a very attractive option. If you're downgrading in defence, you get Tomori in for those nice fixtures. And if Chelsea were ever going to keep clean sheets, surely it's going to be in this run of easier fixtures. So I like Tomori. He's in my thoughts this week as well. Another defender, 5.9 million, Benjamin Mendy. I've added him to the watch list. So I've got Zinchenko. I said all along, I won't worry about Zinchenko until I see Mendy on the pitch. I've seen Mendy on the pitch now, albeit only for 45 minutes, which tells me he's not ready yet to play 90, hopefully. So I'm actually quite tempted to maybe hold on to Zinchenko for another week or two, and hopefully maybe get 1 or 2 more games out of him before I activate the wildcard. So I don't have a set date in mind for wildcard, but in the back of my mind, I'm probably looking at the next international break, so I've got probably 2 more game weeks, and then I might end up activating the wildcard. So that's probably more reason to keep Zinchenko and hope for the best, because it's just another 2 weeks, and then I can deal with him on the wild card if I do play it during the break. So Mendy, going to keep a close eye on him, see how many minutes he gets over the next couple of games. I'm recording on Tuesday morning. Man City are playing tonight in the Cup, so my hope there is that Zinchenko doesn't play that game. Maybe Mendy or Angelino plays left back tonight, so that will hopefully mean that Zinchenko might come back in then for the Everton game at the weekend. So I think if that happens, if Zinchenko sits out the Cup game, I'll be more inclined to keep him then and hope for the best that he does get a start against Everton at the weekend. The last player I've added to the watch list this week, it's not a defender, it's West Ham midfielder, 5.9 million, Yarmolenko. He scored 2 goals in his last 3 games. I've been impressed with West Ham this season, and I've been impressed with Yarmolenko. Coming back from a very serious injury. I think he spent about 9 months out with a knee injury. Before that injury, he's always been a great asset. Before he came to the Premier League, he was a great asset. Across. I remember having him in different fantasy formats, and I have fond memories. He's always been a pretty good fantasy asset. What I like most about Yarmolenko is he's very greedy, and that's what you like in an FPL player. A bit like Son. There's a couple of players who are just greedy, and they just take a shot on whenever they get the chance. John McGinn is another one. You like players, when they get the ball, the first thing on their mind is just shoot. They don't really care about who's around them. That was a great goal Yarmolenko scored against my United boys at the weekend. So yeah, he doesn't play 90 minutes every week, but that's probably he is coming back from a serious injury, so they're probably being careful with him. So he's on the watch list. I'm going to keep an eye on him next week or two, and again, when it comes to wildcard time, if he keeps up the form, if he can start getting closer to 90 minutes every week, I think he could be a really good option this season at a very friendly price. A couple of players I've removed from the watch list this week. Most of these are self-explanatory. Ryan Fraser on the bench last 2 weeks. I think there might have been a slight injury reason for that, at least last week. So last 2 game weeks he's played 33 minutes and 27 minutes. So I've got no interest in Fraser. Solanke's been playing. Bournemouth have been playing well without Fraser, so it's a slight worry there. Gineppo gone from the watch list, injured. Dan James gone from the watch list because he plays for Man United, and we are awful. I don't want to invest in any Man United players at the minute. And Rashford as well gone. Obviously he went down injured, and it looks like he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. One thing about the Rashford injury, what it could mean is it could mean more minutes for Mason Greenwood. Greenwood had tonsillitis going into game week 6, and he scored in the Europa League the week before. So I think if he wasn't sick for that game, he might have actually got a start in that West Ham game. So hopefully he can recover for game week 7 for the Arsenal game. And I think if he does recover, and if Rashford is out, which it looks like he will be, hopefully Greenwood can get a start there. I think if Solskjaer gives any indications on Friday that Rashford will start, I think I'll be very tempted to start him myself. I was planning to get rid of him this week to get Abraham. My initial plans were Robertson and Greenwood out this week for Abraham and maybe someone like Rico. But given how every week that passes, I find it harder and harder to sell Robertson, and they've got Sheffield United at the weekend. So I'm probably going to end up keeping Robertson now, just because it makes more sense to sell Zinchenko or Lucas Dean given Everton's form, and Everton play Man City this week as well. So because of that Rashford injury, I might be more likely to keep Greenwood. And as I say, if it looks like he might start against Arsenal, I'll be very tempted to start him, because we know what Arsenal are like defensively, and Greenwood's a very good finisher. So hopefully he can get some game time. And it would be pretty sweet to get some FPL points from him over the next couple of weeks as well. So I'm going to watch that press conference very closely on Friday from Solskjaer on that. Going to tackle some questions now before I come to captaincy and transfers in more detail. The first question came in from Horse. Always good when the horses are asking FPL questions. It's a game for everyone. Horse asks, Chelsea triple up for their great fixtures. Tomori, Mount and Tammy look great. So yeah, I think a lot of people are going to consider this Chelsea triple up. A lot of people already have, Mount. A lot of people probably already have Mount and Abraham. So it's at the moment I don't have any Chelsea players, and they're the team I'm targeting this week with my transfers. I want Abraham. I would love to get Mount as well. And if I am downgrading in defence, Tomori is one of the guys I'm thinking about. So do I like the Chelsea triple up for the next couple of weeks? Yes, I do. As I mentioned, they play Brighton, Southampton, Newcastle next 3. Very good fixtures. I particularly like the attackers. So I'm going to have at least one of Mount or Abraham by the time the weekend rolls around. I may even end up getting both. Question came in from Peter Alexei. Peter asks, Bobby Firmino, can he be our Liverpool attacker? So I guess this question means, can you have Firmino and not, Salah and Mane? Can you just go with Firmino as, your Liverpool attacking coverage? So I think going on the first couple of weeks, I've ignored Firmino probably for about a year and a half now, which, probably a lot of FPL managers have done because we have Salah and Mane, so we don't really need to look at Firmino. But with each week that passes this season, it's getting harder and harder to ignore Firmino. He's in the form of his life. He's taking more shots than he usually does. He's obviously always creates chances, getting assists, getting goals. What is he? I think he's still 9.5 million. I don't think he's changed in price at all, as far as I know, which is odd because he's been excellent week after week. So 9.5 is it's not an easy price to get to, but can you go for him over someone like Mane or Salah? I think you can at the moment on current form. I think if I was on a wild card this week, I would probably be heavily considering Firmino, maybe Firmino, Trent, and maybe still Robertson, maybe that triple up, and going without Mane or Salah. And what I would be probably thinking there is maybe, rather than having Mane or Salah, you could have someone like Son, so probably a midfield of De Bruyne, Sterling, Son, and then maybe Firmino up front. I think it's an option. I think if it came to the crunch though, and I was wildcarding this week, I would find it very hard to go without one of Mane or Salah. I do think long term they will still prove to be the better options. But there's no denying Firmino's offering great value, and he's definitely one to consider if you can get to him. That's the hard thing, you're probably going to need 2 or 3 transfers in most cases to get to Firmino if you're like me and you've got a cheap strike force. But definitely one, he's on my watch list, and definitely when it comes to wildcard, I'll be heavily considering Firmino more than I have done over the last couple of seasons. Question from Christian Bradle. Christian asks, is it crazy to be looking at FPL legend Marcos Alonso with Emerson out injured and Kante back to help with the hunt for clean sheets? So I think Kante back is huge for Chelsea. He was possibly man of the match, in my opinion, in that Liverpool game, despite being on the losing side. He just covers so much ground. He turns up everywhere. When you watch Chelsea, you think there's 2 Kantes on the pitch because he's just everywhere. So I think that will definitely help them with the defensive issues they've been having. I thought Tomori as well, actually. That was the first time I'd really seen Tomori play for 90 minutes. And for a young guy, I thought he was absolutely excellent. He kept Salah and Mane very quiet in that game. So Tomori, I think, is a very good defender, better than Zuma from what I can see, which wouldn't be hard, to be fair. So I do think, as bad as Chelsea have been defensively this season, surely before long, surely they have to keep clean sheets soon. And I think Kante coming back in will be a big help to that. So the question here is about Marcos Alonso, the FPL legend. So Emerson came back at the weekend but went off injured after about 15 minutes. So obviously he came back too early. He's aggravated the hamstring, so good chance he'll be out again now for another couple of weeks, which brings Alonso into the picture. Alonso was dropped, I think he's dropped to 6.2 million from, I presume he was 6.5 at the start of the season. And I mean, we would all love to have Alonso for the next couple of weeks, but obviously his price is tricky. I have added him to the watch list this week. I actually only added him to the watch list when I got Christian's question in, because I'd kind of forgotten about him and I hadn't really thought about him. And that Emerson injury, especially for someone like me who still has a wild card, if I'm going to wildcard soon, it would be pretty fun to get Alonso in for these nice fixtures and hope that he can, pull out a few 15-pointers. So I don't think it's crazy to consider him, especially if you've got a wildcard left that you can, get rid of him again when Emerson comes back. We know what Alonso can do. He's going to spend more time attacking than he does defending. Alonso in the team is probably not a good thing for Chelsea clean sheets. Emerson's probably a better defender, but there's always attacking returns there for Alonso. I think he's got a couple already this season. So yeah, why not? If it's a fun pick. Again, probably easier if you do have a wild card left. It's got me. I'm just sitting here thinking now. I want Alonso. I want to get Alonso this week, so I'm definitely gonna think about him for the next couple of days. Next question coming from Flapjack. Flapjack asks, do you think it's viable to just go the whole season without premium strikers? It stops a lot of wasted transfers, in my opinion, as these seem to be the areas where people bounce around, going from Kane to Aubameyang back to Kane, for example. So yeah, Flapjack's asking here, is it viable to go the whole season without a premium striker? I think absolutely it is. I think it's something, I haven't had a premium striker all season. I don't have any plans to get them in at the moment. So there's a good chance I may end up going the whole season without them, without, planning it. I haven't gone into the season saying I'm not getting a premium striker this season because, you've got to be flexible. But at the moment, there's just so many cheap options up front. And you've basically got premium strikers playing as midfielders. You've got Salah, Mane, Sterling. Son's coming into the picture now as well, who's effectively a striker. So I really don't think you need premium strikers when you've got all those heavy hitters in midfield. So is it viable to go the whole season without the likes of Aubameyang, Kane, Aguero? I think it is. There's so many different ways to play this game. You're going to have managers this season who have Aguero, Aubameyang, Kane at various times. And you're going to have managers who don't get any of them at any point, who will both finish top 10k. There's so many different ways to play this game. So if going without premium strikers, if you feel it's something that will work for you, then by all means go for it. A question from Vasa Gold. Vasa asks, how do you solve a problem like Lucas Digne? Yeah, so I went into the season with a mindset of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Lucas Digne being my two defenders who hopefully I will keep all season, set and forget. Two spots in my team that I don't even need to worry about. Now, Trent is still in that camp. I hope I will own him for 38 game weeks because he's just an FPL legend. Cracking free kick at the weekend. But Lucas Digne, on the other hand, I can understand why people are getting very impatient with him. So I think Everton have conceded 7 goals in the last 3 games. So straight away, clean sheets are a big issue. Clean sheets are first and foremost what we look for in a defender in FPL. The other issue with Lucas Digne as well is at one point at the weekend, I on match of the day, we got home from Glasgow about 9 o'clock. So I spent about an hour and a half sobering up so I could watch match of the day. So I wasn't 100%. Alert during it. But one thing I do remember is looking at match of the day at one point and seeing Cenk Tosun up front. And I thought, right, either the beer hasn't worn off yet or Cenk Tosun is actually on the pitch. And he was on the pitch. I had to go and check it the next day. Calvert-Lewin is still getting game time. And I just feel that these strikers are not up to much. Even Keane, the new guy, has he scored yet? Maybe he scored 1 at most. Everton are really struggling to score goals, which is a big issue for assist potential for Lucas Digne as well. So it's all well and good if Lucas Digne is creating as many chances as any other defender in the league, but if he's got Calvert-Lewin and Cenk Tosun up front, they're not going to convert the chances as players in other teams would have. If you had Lucas Digne playing for another side, maybe if you had Allaire or Wilson or these guys to target in the box, I think he would get a lot more assists. So there's 2 issues. There's no clean sheets coming the last couple of weeks, and I'm worried about Everton's attack as well. So all signs point to selling him because he's expensive. And obviously he plays Man City next as well. So in my situation, I went into the season viewing him as a season keeper. But I am actually considering selling him this week. And again, it's probably the fact that the wildcards in the back of my mind makes it easier to do so, because my thinking would be Lucas Digne plays Man City next. I don't want to start him in that game. It's good chance of minus points there. Look at Watford last weekend. He plays Burnley then, so Man City next, and then Burnley away, which is not an easy fixture as well for Lucas Digne, and then I'll possibly wildcard international break. So really, I would only be losing him for 2 weeks, because I could always get him back then if I wanted to in game week 9. If I do wildcard at that point, so it's easier for me, I think, to sell him when I can get him back quite easily on a wildcard. So yeah, I can completely understand why people are selling him, and I think it's justified. Selling a player like Digne can always backfire, because we know he creates a lot of chances. He can get goals as well, and it would be typical FPL this week if everyone sells him and then he goes and scores against Man City, sticks a free kick in the top corner or something like that. So, but it's very, very hard to see a clean sheet this weekend. I'd say it's close to a 0% chance in my book of an Everton clean sheet against Man City. So for that reason, yeah, I don't think you have to be fearful selling Lucas Digne this week, and I may end up doing it myself. Last question I'll tackle this week is from Dan Brown. Not sure now if this is the magician guy. Maybe he plays FPL. Don't think he'd be asking me questions though if he was playing FPL, Dan Brown. Maybe that's Darren Brown. I'm getting my names mixed up here. Dan Brown asks, should we keep the faith with Sterling even though the switch to Aguero is very tempting? So yeah, I'm on Sterling. Very frustrating. 2 blanks and the benching. And meanwhile, Aguero's been doing damage. But one thing I couldn't believe at the weekend was when I checked that score, 8-0. Aguero only scored 1 goal, 1 assist. Anyone who captained Aguero, triple captained Aguero, can feel very, very unlucky by that. You expect, if City score 8 goals, you expect Aguero to have at least 3 of them, if not 4 or 5. Am I tempted to make the switch to Aguero? At the moment, I'm not. If I was on a wild card this week, I think I would be. I don't know what way I would go between Sterling and Aguero if I was on a wild card this week. I think that's a really, really tricky call. But for me, I'm going to stick the faith with Sterling. He's had his rest now, so hopefully that's a good thing, and we won't see him get rested for another while. Hopefully for me, as a non-Aguero owner, that maybe it'll be his turn to get a rest soon. And just going back, I just wanted to remind myself, I had a look back, Sterling versus Aguero over the last 2 seasons. In the last two seasons, Sterling scored 234 and 229 FPL points to Aguero's 201 and 169. So, history tells us that long term, Sterling will still be a very, very, very good FPL asset. I think selling them is pretty dangerous. Selling them maybe for, if it's a switch to Aguero, maybe not so much. But I think after a rest, and the way Everton have been defending recently, I think selling Sterling is quite dangerous this week. And I'm a glutton for punishment. I've captained Sterling 3 weeks in a row now, so blank benching, and I may end up captaining him again 4th week in a row. It wasn't the 3rd time lucky. Maybe it'll be 4th time lucky. I'm just going to keep doing it until what is it they say? Insanity is, what is it? The definition is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, something like that. So maybe I'm being stupid here, but yeah, I still think Sterling is a very good asset. So I probably wouldn't be making the switch, the hokey cokey on free transfers or -4s or anything like that. But I think on wildcard, if anyone who's on a wildcard this week, I think it's perfectly justifiable to go for Aguero over Sterling if you're not going for both. Thanks for the questions as always, folks. Going to talk now a little bit about captaincy and transfers for game week 7. So I was, as most weeks I put a Twitter poll out for this podcast for captaincy options. You can only add 4 options on Twitter, which is pretty annoying. And I started typing it this morning, and then I just thought, you know what, this is not a good week to do a poll on Twitter because there's so many options, and it wouldn't be a true poll with just four options. There's Salah, there's Mane, Tammy, Sterling, Aguero, Son, Kane. There's loads and loads of options. There's more as well. Aubameyang's in great form. So I didn't bother with a poll this week. So what I did was I just had a quick look on the Fantasy Football Scout website for their poll, just to see how that one was going. There was just over 1,000 votes on that when I checked this morning. Salah was sitting on the top with 27%. Abraham was second, which surprised me a little bit, with 13%. Sterling also 13%. Son 8%. Aguero 7%. Kane 6%. So as you can see, there's going to be a big spread of captaincy this week. Maybe I know a lot of people, when there's a big spread of captaincy options, that's the week when some people like to maybe try something different. Maybe it's less risky to do so. For me, I went into the season with Sterling and Salah with the idea of just captaining one or the other every week. Obviously, De Bruyne is in the picture now. We can't ignore him anymore for the captaincy. I thought, I'm surprised he doesn't have a higher percentage there on the poll. It must have been less than 5% after his big one last week. So it's really tricky, and I really haven't given this captaincy much thought yet. I think in my bus team it's on Sterling, as I mentioned. I'll give it more thought later in the week. Salah away to Sheffield United could wrestle it off Sterling. If I bring in Tammy Abraham, I think I would be quite tempted to go for him at home to Brighton, given the form he's been in. I think Spurs are possibly the best option for captaincy this week. They're at home to Southampton. Southampton have a big game midweek, a cup game against Portsmouth, and it's probably bigger than most other teams because it's a big rivalry. So Southampton could end up playing a pretty strong team in that game. I think the fans will be desperate for them to win that one. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup Hasenhüttl does put out in that cup game. I'm expecting a strong one. So that could play into Spurs' hands at the weekend. So if you've got Kane, I think he's a very good option against Southampton this weekend. But I would love to have Youngman Son this week. I think if I had Son this week, I would probably captain him. And that moves me on to my transfers. Part of me wants to go crazy. With in the back of my mind, with a wild card coming up soon, part of me wants to go crazy and get Son this week and captain him against Southampton. But that would mean losing probably Salah or Sterling, which it's a scary thought, but it probably would only be for 2 weeks. And I just love Son. I would just love to have him for that Southampton game at home. I think he'll do really well. It could be a bit of a differential captain. If Son was to bang as a captain this week, he would fire me up the rankings. So it's in the back of my mind. Probably unlikely to do it out of fear, out of anything else, of selling Sterling or Salah. But I will mull that over for the next couple of days. I've got 2 free transfers, and there's about 15 different routes I could go this week. I'm really undecided. I could sell Lucas Digne. I could sell Zinchenko. I want to get Chelsea assets, so at least one of Abraham or Mason Mount. If I get Tammy Abraham, I have to decide whether I sell Greenwood or Ashley Barnes. Do I give Ashley Barnes a little bit more time? Barnes has got Aston Villa and Everton next, so decent fixtures. That's one of those big questions you have in FPL quite often. How much time do you give a player to deliver? I've had Barnes for 2 weeks now. I brought him in, with 4 game weeks in mind. So should I stick to my guns and be patient with him, or do I much prefer Tammy Abraham for the next 2 weeks? So it's a tough one there. Barnes versus Tammy versus Greenwood. Obviously, if I want to get these guys in, I'm going to have to make downgrades. So it's probably going to be defensive downgrades. Zinchenko or Lucas Digne, down to maybe as far down as Rico if I'm changing formation to 3-4-3, or someone like Tomori, Aurier, these guys, Tyrone Mings, I'm trying to think, Soyuncu. There's lots of options around that price bracket. So I'm recording on Tuesday and I'm absolutely clueless as to what I'm going to do with my transfers this week. Captaincy, I'm not decided either. Every week I do record another podcast, a Patreon podcast later in the week, once I do know what I'm doing. So this week that podcast is going to be on Thursday. So if you're interested in finding out what my final plans will be, check out patreon.com/FPL General for that podcast. I'll be doing another podcast today as well for patrons, which is an eye test podcast where I talk about the games I watched at the weekend, which was Sunday, West Ham, Man United, and the Chelsea-Liverpool game. So I'll be doing a podcast on those two games later today as well. I'm actually heading to Norway this weekend. My wife is a teacher, and she's got Friday and Monday off. So we always try and make the most of her holiday. So we like going places we've never been before, tick another country off the list. So we're heading to Bergen in Norway at the weekend. So I'll be watching my FPL team in a bar somewhere in Bergen. So if you're any of my followers, I know I've got a lot of Norwegian followers. They are the kings of FPL. So if any of you are going to be in Bergen on Saturday, send me a message on Twitter, and I'll let you know where me and the wife are watching the games on Saturday, and you can join us for a beer. I've been told the beers are very expensive, so I probably won't be having too many of them while I'm there. So I'm not sure how much time. I probably won't be online much Friday until Monday, so I may end up making my transfers early, possibly on Thursday, which is always a bit of a risk, but real life gets in the way sometimes, and I might just have to act early this week. It's another, I was slightly tempted to wildcard this week, but the fact that I've got this Norway trip, it's probably a bad week to wildcard, because Friday, Saturday I'm probably not going to get online much. And if I was online, she'd be moaning at me, being on holiday. So I'm probably just gonna leave the work phone at home and stuff like that when I go away on Friday, and just enjoy the trip. So yeah, what else am I left to mention? Recorded another very good Fantasy Weekly podcast last night with James, Holly, and FPL Dave. That will be available on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check that one out. Lots of good FPL content in there. Dave is on his wildcard, so it was an interesting discussion, helping him shape his wildcard for the weekend. As always, I'll be taking part in the Grand Weekend tournament on Fantasy Bet. There's a £2,500 prize pool, $5.50 to enter. It's 18 plus and begambleaware.org. I'll definitely be captaining Heung-min Son in that one this week, I think, whether I bring him into my FPL team or not. Good luck in Game Week 7, folks, and I'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Cheerio.